Welcome in. We are going to be talking about the rise of AI and changes in open source and how they're transforming the way that developers learn, grow, and build their careers.
Yeah, a little bit of housekeeping. So as you get settled in, go ahead and if you haven't, pull up this poll everywhere. We're gonna have several questions for you throughout the presentation, so please keep it up.
Yep, and you'll notice that...
hold on.
Okay.
Sorry. So there's a PDF version of this presentation in the Schedule. We'll publish a public link to it on LinkedIn in the next day or two. And then in terms of questions, we're not gonna have questions as part of our presentation, but we will be available to talk at the end. So you're welcome to come up or chat with us in the hallway.
Yep, we'll do that hallway track.
Yeah.
And yeah, you'll note that there's a blue bar at the bottom of each slide. That's kind of our progress as we move through this agenda. Just really quickly, the agenda today, we're going to talk about the open source landscape in the last 10, 15 years, and then how AI is changing things and what the future developer might look like. And then we'll give you some resources and kind of some takeaways.
Yeah, so you might be wondering, who are we and why are we talking about this? So my name is Kim Schlesinger. I'm a learning experience designer at Contentful, but I consider myself a tech educator. I've been a developer advocate, I've been a site reliability engineer, and I got into tech after a career in teaching. I went to a boot camp in Boulder, Colorado called Galvanize.
Yep, and that's where I got to meet Kim. I am a former kindergarten teacher, and then I became a boot camp admissions advisor at Galvanize, and then went on from there to sell myself on the program, go through a 6-month immersive, become a full stack web developer. And now I'm working at GitHub, where I work on the education team, and I help students, schools, and teachers get familiarized with Git and GitHub. And yeah, so we've been working together at a couple of different companies, Galvanize and DigitalOcean.
Yeah, we work together at those two companies. And then when we've worked at different companies, we've found ways to work together across companies, like by giving talks at conferences. So. Yeah. All right, so we want to know who you are, our audience, and when we were preparing this talk, we were preparing for an audience of developer educators, so K-12 teachers, professors, people who mentor, but let's see what our audience actually looks like. So that's the poll everywhere. If you haven't seen it, please take that. Uh-oh. Oh, I know what's happening. Okay, I'm gonna have to do some on-the-fly IT work.
Excellent.
But let me look at the poll and then I will figure out how to get it so everybody else can see it. Okay, I know that you cannot see this bar. That's my bad. I'm gonna fix that in just a moment. But right now in the room, we've got 40% of you are software engineers or developers. 15% of you are engineering managers or technical leaders. 10% product manager, designer, or developer adjacent, like a technical writer. And then 10% of you are educators, researchers, or academics. I've got another one. We're going to skip that. And so we're going to go into why this talk, why now. So AI has changed everything, especially in the last 6 months, and it's been a big topic of conversation here at Open Source Summit. So AI is reshaping how developers learn, how they code, and how they're going to be hired. Phoebe looked at the schedule for this conference a few days ago, and one thing she noted was that a lot of talks are about looking back, like historically what has happened, how does AI fit into that, and what does that mean for the future? And that's exactly what we're gonna be doing. So what's changed? Everything. Education is changing due to AI, open source, the industry norms are shifting really fast and they're not always in sync. And it matters because educators, employers, and learners need guidance and need information about how to proceed in this world. So what we're hoping you take away with today is a better understanding of how open source and developer education have shifted and how they're interconnected, and then what skills matter most for developers today.
Yep. And before we look ahead, let's just take a minute to kind of reflect on where open source came from and how it shaped our own journeys as developers. So before we do that, let's hop into, before we hop into the history, let's have you share a little bit about how open source has shaped your careers. While you're taking that poll and Kim's getting that set up, I'll just share a little bit about my journey. So when I started at Galvanize, I was an admissions advisor, and so I got to hear a lot about new people coming into tech. And then when I went through the immersive myself, open source libraries were something that we used as part of our stack and got familiarized that way. And then we also ran events at Galvanize where we did hackathons like Hacktoberfest. You may be familiar with Hacktoberfest. I formerly managed Hacktoberfest at DigitalOcean. So it was a really kind of a cool full circle journey for me at that time, and just being a part of the open source community. And yeah, like the open source has changed so much from the early 2000s to where we are today. So how many of you, just to raise your hands, how many of you were there at the very start, at the beginning of the 2000s, and like actively participating in the open source community? Okay, 3 people, 4 people. This is pretty amazing.
Keep going.
All right. All right. Well, we'll come back to that. We want to hear more about how it has shaped your careers. But I'll talk a little bit about the early 2000s. And I apologize. I'm going to use notes, so I'll look down periodically. But all right. So the main thing about open source in the early 2000s was it was really driven by ideals. So it was a small community of people. It was rooted in debates about freedom and pragmatism, and the strong community value was woven into the core of open source. And then we had projects like Apache and MySQL and OpenOffice, and they were thriving, but open source at that time had not become a mainstream, big business model like we see today. And then learning was pretty much self-taught and community-powered. So developers were, using forums. They were reading books, exploring tutorials on somebody's, little homegrown website. And then lastly, there really wasn't social coding as we know it today. Git was only introduced in 2005, so there weren't really version control, options there. And so developers submitted patches by email and managed versions with CVS or SVNs. So very different from where we are today. And I'll keep going. All right, so let's see.
Oh, I'm sorry. I messed the poll EV up. I'm going to get it fixed, but keep going, Phoebe.
Okay, so let's go to the mid-2000s. Okay, this is kind of when the big boom happened. And it's kind of interesting to think about open source as like a boom and bust industry, but it has been a little bit. So in the mid-2000s, this is kind of when Kim and I got a front seat to the show. Because we both got involved in open source in the 20-teens. And this is when the developer pipeline as we know it really became a part of normal everyday business. Learn to code culture took off. Free tutorials, screencasts, early platforms like Stack Overflow showed up, Code Academy. And then, as far as like projects were concerned, some open source projects really enabled real world learning like Rails, jQuery, WordPress. And then GitHub came along and lowered barriers to contribution. So version control, collaboration went from mailing lists to pull requests. And then the app economy really started to reward developers for building. So the rise of the iOS and the Android, and developers could learn, build, and ship, and monetize all in one go. All right, and so now here we are today. So we went from mainstream, we went from like a grassroots movement to a mainstream thing. Open source is basically the modern developer's launch pad. Open source is a learning path, it's an infrastructure, it's an employer, it's a business model, it's everything, right? It's interwoven in today's business in a way that we just don't see. And you can even look at the conference schedule and you can see, if you've been coming to Open Source Summit over the last few years, you will see a real difference in who is here presenting. So for example, one thing you didn't see like 5 years ago is Disney or Honda. So like those are the kinds of corporations that are getting involved in open source now, and it's really kind of changed the landscape. Big tech really steered and invested in these key projects like Kubernetes, and so that has led the way in terms of bringing open source as a very mainstream thing that developers are involved with on the daily in their regular work. And AI accelerates all of that. So we are all at this bleeding edge where we're kind of in the eye of the storm. AI is changing everything so rapidly. Like for me personally at work, I literally have changed this talk every single day because of something that came up at work that I was like, oh, I need to talk about that. Oh, I need to talk about that. So I just want to take this moment to recognize that we are all experiencing a massive social, cultural change. And that's part of the reason why I felt really passionately that Kim and I have this ringside seat to this progression. And now we see the confusion. We've talked about it with numerous people here at the conference. Like, what do we do? How do we teach AI? Like, what do I as a developer need to learn how to do? So that's a little bit where we were, where we're going.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back. I do want to, you're going to see everything. So this is a tool called Poll Everywhere, and I like it because you can embed it in Google Slides, but you have to have the Chrome extension, which I didn't install on this computer, which was my presentation computer. So yeah, let's go to
Demo Gods.
I want to go to, in one sentence, describe how open source shaped your career. So that question should be open now. Oh, I love it. Let me go back one. Oops. Okay, there it is. All right, so thinking about, in one sentence, describe how open source shaped your career. Looks like worked with open source tools on a daily basis. Open source gave me new opportunities. There's massive global impact and learning. Started doing Linux administration while working as a Windows admin and jumped into being a pure admin and now work 100% as an open source software engineer. That's very cool. Open source tools are commonly used at my work. Open source helped me tremendously as a software engineering student with no funds available for paid solutions to learn programming with, so using open source as a learning path itself, developing self-hosted apps. Led me to managing an inner source program for a large company. All right, awesome. So of the folks in the room, a lot of you have been impacted tremendously by open source, like it's your career in some cases. And so yeah, we just wanted to highlight like the importance of open source as an educational tool and in the work that we're all doing. All right, so Phoebe went through all of the history of open source from the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, and now. And so we've kind of looked back, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna look forward and talk about how AI is changing everything. And so we selected two different peer-reviewed studies to look at. So we all know how quickly new AI tools and new takes on AI are coming out. And so we decided to pull some things from academic literature, which the peer review process means that it gets reviewed by experts before it's published. So this is from a Harvard Business School study, and I'll talk about the methodology in just a moment, but basically what the study found is that one human using an AI tool with their regular work outperformed a team of humans without AI. And you can see on the chart, there's the individual with no AI, a team with no AI, an individual plus AI, and a team with AI, and the standardized quality, it's greater each time. And so how the study was conducted, 776 professionals at Procter & Gamble were randomly assigned to work on real product innovation challenges. So they were doing work that they would have been doing anyway. And some folks got AI assistance and some didn't. Important to note that some of these folks were software engineers, but some of these people had other jobs like marketers or accountants. But what this study found is that individuals using AI performed as well as two-person teams working without AI. So Phoebe, when we were talking about this earlier today, you said something about how employers might look at that data.
I think that if you were an employer and you looked at that, you'd be like, okay, well, here's a way that I can cut costs, right? And then if you're the employee, your boots are shaking. Like, what? Like, my job's going away? We're seeing it. It's happening. So I think it's just relevant to take a pause that this affects people's livelihood and their ability to have the life they want to lead. And so it's really core to our survival, and that's why it's taking up so much brain capacity for everybody. That's why it creates so much instability or anxiety around the idea of like, how do I navigate this AI landscape?
All right, we lost our slide deck. I'm wondering, can the person in the back help? All right, I'm going to tell you about the second study, but you probably heard about it. So the second study was a look at the impact of GitHub Copilot on the work of developers contributing to open source projects. Thank you. And so I pulled this directly from Dr. Frank Nagel's talk yesterday, the economic impact of open source. And so he was part of a team that ran a study looking at developers contributing to open source projects, and some folks were using GitHub Copilot, others weren't. It was over a 2-year period. And what the study found is that people using GitHub Copilot on those projects, they increased their coding by 12%, decreased project management by 24%. This one I thought was really interesting. The effects were bigger for less experienced people and for women, so people who have been historically left out of the tech industry. Exploration of new projects increases, and then independent work increases, collaborative work decreases. So more coding by yourself, less project management, more time on the actual project itself. What do you think?
Yeah, and this is a theme you're gonna start to see, which is that we're moving from this collaborative, group oriented kind of work towards more individual work. And some more questions are gonna come up towards the end of our chat here, but you're picking up on a thread that is common throughout this, that is a theme we're seeing. And if we go to the next slide, so some of the effects that we're seeing on educators and students is just a really wide spectrum of opinions and feelings. So we've got students who are pushing back on teachers' use of AI. We've got students who are rejecting tech. We've got students who are embracing AI like rapidly. And then we've got studies that are showing us, LLMs are changing how we think. And then is that good or is it bad? And then attitudes of engineers, total full spectrum. Some engineers have mandates at work now that they have to use AI in their work. It's being tied to their performance. And then some engineers do not have to use it at all. So yeah, there's
some people are not allowed to use it.
Yeah, and some teachers won't allow students to use AI in the classroom, and other teachers are writing textbooks about how to do it. So there's just this is just really a slide to capture how broad the spectrum is of people's opinions across this subject. And so here we are, we're going to start looking at the future developer.
Yeah, so Phoebe gave us a great overview of the history of open source from 2000 to now. And we've talked about AI and its potential impacts on productivity. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about what the future of the developer's job and developer education might look like. All right, back to the poll everywhere. So the question is, how confident do you feel in your ability to guide others effectively in using AI tools? Yep.
We're racing against the clock.
We are racing against the clock, but we hit our mark. We hit our halfway mark, so we're good to go.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is interesting.
Oh, I know. So what's also interesting, there is a lot of research that went into this talk that we weren't really able to show. There were a lot of charts and graphs, and I just want to say that, like, yeah, what's interesting is the impact on like developer job outcomes after they graduate from like a CS program or a boot camp. More on that in the hallway track.
Yeah. Okay, so looking at the feedback you all gave us, it looks like there might be a tie between folks who are sort of neutral, like, I feel neither way about giving guidance on using AI tools, to like, I feel pretty confident. I've got two folks who are like, I feel great about it. One person who's feeling like a little iffy about it. So I like this high level of confidence. We've got a really skilled audience. So we're gonna present some recommendations about how developers, open source maintainers, and contributors can think about AI, and we'll be curious to hear, especially those of you who feel really confident about this, if you agree with us or if you disagree with us, or if you have other recommendations.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about how at the end of the 20-teens and the beginning of the now, one person can build, market, and monetize a product with global reach and open source as the foundation. And I just wanted to share like an example of that. So yesterday I was at lunch and I met a person who was attending the conference, and they are here specifically because they don't know how to code. They have a product that they want to create as an app, and they're using AI, GitHub Copilot in particular, to help them create this application. And she said that it has sped up her learning by 5 years. And so I just feel like this is a signal moment because she is not alone. There are going to be a lot more people who are going to be entering the realm of being a developer who don't necessarily have the background and foundational skills that folks who have gone through traditional programs have done. So it raises some questions. How do we teach developers to evaluate, communicate, and collaborate when the pace is changing so fast? But people are actually working on this right now.
Yes, so this is a framework about how, as an educator, you can approach talking to your students about AI. So this is from a nonprofit organization called Teach AI, and they're focused on providing resources for K-12 teachers. And right now I work at Contentful, but my job prior to this was at a nonprofit called Indigitize. And the mission of the nonprofit is to bring culturally relevant computer science to indigenous students in the US. And I was initially hired as a curriculum writer. And so my job was, I'm going to write curriculum for students. And as soon as the organization started talking to teachers, district leaders, parents, students, we found out that teachers in particular needed guidance around AI. And so that organization has really pivoted from a curriculum organization to like an organization that contributes to frameworks like these. So this framework is really interesting. It's got 4 parts to it, but I like the higher level skills that it's pointing to. So the first one is blue, it's knowledge. And so students have to engage and know about AI. And so that's the first step. Second thing is skills. And so students are able to use tools to create with AI, and they're using AI to manage higher level tasks. And then we've got this heart here, it's attitudes about AI. So are they curious, responsible, empathetic, innovative? And then the final step is actually that they design AI, that they're writing the code, or they're using an agentic program to create more AI with it. And so I really appreciate those mindsets because they're tool agnostic. You don't see ChatGPT on here. You don't see generative AI or even agentic AI. This framework is supposed to be really high level so that it can keep up with the rapid pace of AI. So Phoebe, I'm going to pass it to you.
Yeah, so one of the things I just want to mention about this is I literally did not know that Teach AI existed until last week. And they are in the process of writing their draft recommendation, and so you can go to their website now and provide your feedback about how you feel like this draft AI literacy recommendation is. And they're very open, they share all of their stuff. Highly recommend, we'll share the resources at the end. One last thing about this, I was speaking with a teacher yesterday, and they said their students are engaging with AI and creating with AI, but this is what they need help with, the managing and the developing. They don't know how to really get into this in their curriculum. All right, so with that new understanding and the benefit of a framework, we've got some recommendations. So I want to specifically speak to the maintainers here in the room. So many maintainers are dipping their toes into this AI contribution space. And I want to just acknowledge that some of you may be very comfortable, no problem communicating with your contributors. But I really want to stress that you are creating the world that you want to live in. So you need to engage with your project and your contributors and define how you want to be in the world. So this is your opportunity. Yes, things are confusing right now, but you have the power, and how you act with your community is what they're going to take away as the culture, and they're going to perpetuate that. So this is your opportunity to take a stance and to lead. And so I really recommend setting clear contribution guidelines. If you want to accept AI in your contributions, be specific. Consider how you want AI to operate in your project. You can now, because yesterday I found out that one of my coworkers just released a new project that is an AI chat moderator. So you can go to GitHub and you can look chat AI moderator and you can find this project. So it's just happening so quickly. But these are the things that I want to point out as considerations, and especially too if you're automating things with actions, to think about how you want your AI. Do you want it to accept pull requests, or do you want it to just review them? Do you want to use it for debugging, or do you want to use it for something else? So I'll pass it over to Kim to talk about contributors.
Yeah, so for the contributors in the room, ideally your project that you're working on gives you guidance about AI, but it's extremely unlikely given some of the big open source projects Phoebe and I looked at. I was looking for, is there any information in the contributing .markdown file about guidelines on AI? So if you're a contributor and you don't see that, we recommend that you do these things. The first is when you open a pull request or a merge request, that you explicitly disclose any AI assistance that you've used for your PR. We're going to show an example of what that could look like toward the end of the talk, but you're kind of, you're making this format up on your own. So, you could say I used AI for this, or you could get really specific about the tools and the models that you used. For contributors, you want to prioritize quality over volume, and so use AI to help you write a quality contribution, whether it's code or to the documentation. Don't worry about volume. So Phoebe and I, we started at DigitalOcean in 2021, and she ran Hacktoberfest, and it was the year after there was a big kerfuffle where a lot of maintainers said please, Hacktoberfest, stop. We're getting all of these junky PRs because people just want to get 3 so they get the t-shirt. So don't do that.
Yeah, it's definitely a high level of PRs is not going to make a maintainer happy. But one thing I want to mention here too is that GitHub itself, we have not put out guidelines on AI contribution citation yet. I think it's coming though. And so hopefully guidance will be, this is another signal of how we are just on this bleeding edge.
Yeah, and then our final piece of advice for contributors, and I heard this from software engineers that I interviewed to prep for this talk. the advice was use an AI tool to get feedback before you submit a PR for review. And so you're getting a review from AI, you're making changes, looking at your code or your text contribution again, and then submitting it. Maintainers are gonna be really happy if the thing that you are contributing works and is ready to go or has very few problems. And so leverage AI to like run the diff on your code and then get advice on what's good here and maybe what should I update and change.
And yeah, I would just add to that and say that it's called co-pilot, not pilot. Use it as a coach and help yourself that way.
Nice. All right, so I'm going to talk more about what AI means for the future of software developer skill sets. And so developers have needed lots of skills in order to get and be successful at jobs. And in the first column on the left, these are things developers have needed before. So first thing, you've got to break down and decompose a problem. You have to break something down into more manageable pieces. That's true now, and it's been true in the past, and it's true in the future. Second thing, you want to develop intuition about the code that you're writing so that you have that code smell, like, this doesn't seem quite right just based on all of my experience. And that's gonna mean actually writing some code by hand, essentially. I went to a meetup, I live in Denver, a few weeks ago. It was the Syntax meetup, and they played this game. It was a 3 hosts that I thought was a great way to develop code intuition, where they each wrote code snippets, and there was something wrong in the syntax, and they would put it up on the screen, and then they would have 2 people racing to find the syntax error first. And the reason I like that is it's that code intuition where you're like, that doesn't feel quite right. And so if you want to play a game with your students or your coworkers, I think that's a great way to do it. But yeah, thinking about if you've never written code before and you have not spent a lot of time writing for loops and then you're in a job, how do you know that the Python or the JavaScript or the Go just isn't quite right? Devs still need creative problem-solving skills, system analysis and design, and the ability to work well with a team. So those things have been true. But new skills, we're kind of moving up the job stack. So new skills that developers need. 1, you have to understand how your work supports high-level business goals or high-level project goals. I think gone are the days of I'm a developer and I just pull tickets from Jira and I don't know how my code or this feature actually contributes to the bigger goal of my organization. And so really being in tune with those things and being able to discuss it. Another new skill is having fluency with AI tools and discernment in using them. So knowing which tools are more trusted than others, kind of keeping up with the LLM models. And that's actually my next point. For developers, you've got to know your LLMs. So in a tool like Cursor, you can select which LLM you're interacting with, and different LLMs have different strengths. And so if you are writing Python code and you're really concerned about the structure of that or the syntax, you may select one LLM, whereas if you're looking at your entire project, maybe it's I don't know, I'm not even gonna give an example, but maybe you need the LLM to analyze your entire project and all of the code in there. Another LLM might be better for that. And so developing fluency and opinions about which of these models are good at one thing but not the other, I think is a skill developers are gonna have to have. And then finally, you gotta have project management skills. If you and your team don't have to write a lot of code, but you have to come together and talk about possible solutions and implement those solutions, you've gotta have the people skills, you gotta be able to articulate a goal and convince people to do that, and then make sure people are finishing on time. And so, yeah, I was telling Phoebe earlier today, I have seen some blog posts and writing recently about super individual contributors, super ICs, and the idea is that because AI tools let us do some of that work That took a long time for humans to do. That now we're like getting bumped into like, well, I've got the code, but now I need to collaborate with another team, or I need someone else to look at it. And so I just think like we're all becoming super individual contributors where we're doing the coding and the project management and all of the other things. So
yeah, one thing you touched on with the LLMs is that some things that developers are bumping up against is certain LLMs have rate limit issues, also like code hallucinations, like, which LLMs are going to be more likely to hallucinate on what you're asking it to do, and then being really, really clear in your communication with the AI to tell it what you need. So, yeah.
Yeah, we took out a prompt engineering bullet here for slide aesthetic reasons, but yeah, prompt engineering is definitely a part of that.
All right, we're almost at time, but I did want to leave you with just like a couple of things, like a couple of hot takes and some shower thoughts, okay? So AI can help maintainers so they don't need as many contributors. I know, it's a hot take. But AI can bring more rigor to a project by enforcing higher quality contributions through automations. Okay, but is AI pushing us to lose that original ethos of open source and disrupting the open source community for the sake of the rise of the individual? And is that worth keeping? Like, how are we changing open source? Moving away from the group to the individual.
That's right. You know what? I saw some of your Pavlovian responses. Please go to the poll everywhere. We've got a survey asking about what you think about that sentiment. Is it worth trying to preserve that community aspect of open source?
And while you're taking that survey, and we'll come back to the survey results there, just to kind of recap a little bit. We've taken a journey through the beginnings of open source through to the present day and intertwined that with developer education. And we have a few things we want to, sort of leave you with. And we've covered a lot today, we know. So open source has always been a path for learning, building, and launching careers, and that has not changed. It continues to be.
Yeah, AI is transforming what it means to learn and code, as well as contribute and collaborate.
And lastly, educators, maintainers, and contributors, basically everybody in this room, you all have a role to play, and I send you out there into the world to go do the thing, be the thing that you want to see in the world. Thank you, Gandhi, for that quote. Be the change you want to see. I empower you to use AI and to teach AI in the way that you feel like fits your moral code.
Yeah. We've got time. Let's go back to the survey. Looks like 8 surveys are underway, 12 are completed. We'll just go to poll everywhere and take a peek. Ooh, okay, so it's a Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. The statement is AI tools are shifting open source development away from collaborative community ethos toward individual productivity, and this change should be resisted. No strongly agrees as of now. 50% somewhat agrees. AI is changing open source culture in concerning ways, but some resistance is appropriate. Got 30% neither agree nor disagree. 20% somewhat disagree. While AI changes how we work, it doesn't fundamentally threaten open source values, and no strong disagrees. So got the sentiment in the middle here, but definitely the majority is some resistance is appropriate. All right, so we did the recap. I'm going to skip this. And so this keeps doing this. We have a resources page, which if you look, it is there. But we really wanted to talk, well, I'll let Phoebe talk about resources, and then we'll talk about this AI
Just
disclosure
really quickly, I have links here to Teach AI, the Computer Science Teaching Association. Like Kim mentioned, even though it's for secondary education, it really has a lot of applications beyond that. And then also, we have all of our research and citations here in the bibliography, so you can see kind of where we got a lot of the information we used today. And then, yeah, let's talk about this.
So yeah, we talked about if you're a contributor, disclosing the AI that you used. So this is our attempt at that in preparing this talk. So it just says, we use the following AI tools in preparing for this talk. So Phoebe, share a few of the tools that you used.
Sure, so ChatGPT 4.0 for revising and editing of content, basically just using it there kind of like Grammarly. And I also use Scholar AI for cross-referencing and fact-checking research studies. You can use ChatGPT to find research studies, but sometimes AI will influence which research studies you look at. So I wanted to use some other sources just to kind of cross-reference.
Yeah, and I am a big user of Claude, and Sonnet 4 is the model that I'm using, honestly, mostly to write the poll everywhere questions.
And we used ChatGPT, which has a Dolly included in it for some of the illustrated digital artwork you saw in this slide deck.
Yeah, so an example of how you can disclose your AI use. And then acknowledgements. We interviewed a lot of people for this talk, and we have their names and their LinkedIn profiles. They're all outstanding folks. So if you're hiring and want to look at their LinkedIn, please do. Yeah, and thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you being here. We'll be down here for a few minutes, do the hallway track, but that is it.
Thank you so much for your attention.